Why is there so much severe weather and why is it so hard to predict? How long will it last and when will the pattern break and cooler temperatures return? Well, got all those answers plus answers to questions you haven't even thought to ask. And that's right, my friends, we've got all of that and much more coming up right now on today's video. Welcome into the show that knows every single word to We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel. We sure do miss artists that span decades. Gone are those days for the most part, but what is not gone is severe weather. And as a matter of fact, yesterday we saw 2.25 severe weather reports, which we'll look at in a minute. Going to see more severe weather today. The severe weather maker sure is on fire. We're going to take a look at why that is. But we're going to start with the wind map. Why are we showing a wind map? Well, a couple of reasons. We're going to see gusts make it into the 40s and even 50s out here in the southern plains. A few gusts back into the Ohio Valley up into the northeast today too. Some of these will occur with thunderstorms, some without, but it will be a breezy day in these areas. But we're going to get over here on the actual wind speed map, and we're going to back this on up just a little bit to see what's going on about right now. That was at 5 p.m. I'm going to roll this out to about 10 a.m. And I'm going to scroll in here. Hopefully you can see the particle animation showing up. Look at this. This shows up very, very nicely on our wind map. You see this line here? This is a boundary. We talk about boundaries when it comes to severe weather. Why does severe weather form? Well, severe weather forms for a number of reasons, and we're going to take a look at some of those reasons, but oftentimes where severe weather forms depends on a few things. One of those things can be boundaries. What is a boundary? Well, a boundary separates air masses of different types or different properties. In this case, we have winds coming up out of the south. You can see the particle animation. This is at the surface. We're going to show an upper level wind map or a mid-level wind map in a minute. And here are wind animations coming out, particle animations coming out of the north. So that means winds coming out of the north here, along and north of the boundary, and then out of the south, along and south of the boundary. And that boundary extends on in this direction like this morning. These boundaries can be influenced by high pressures working in low pressures with counterclockwise spin around those coming in like this, pushing the boundary north as a warm front because you got warm air down here to the south, cold air up to the north. When high pressure comes in behind a low pressure system with that clockwise flow, you're actually seeing a cold front. So the boundary turns into a cold front. All right, so along boundaries, you tend to find air masses of different properties being separated by those boundaries. And a lot of times, and what you're seeing here, again, with this particle animation, is convergence along this boundary at the surface. When you have convergence, air hits each other like this, air here and air here kind of comes here. Instead of going into the ground, which it can't do, it goes up. And so you get the rising motion oftentimes along boundaries. And in the springtime and summertime, when you have mechanisms to produce severe weather, cape, instability, wind shear aloft. Once that air gets going, it goes, and it goes up in a hurry. And depending on the properties of the lower levels into the mid levels of the atmosphere, you could get some big time severe weather. And we saw big time severe weather yesterday with 2 to 3 inch in diameter hail all throughout this area here in northern Iowa into southern Minnesota into central Wisconsin. We'll take a look at those. But I wanted to show you this boundary because this is going to matter to today in terms of how the severe weather threat plays out. Another thing that can influence boundaries is what we call mesoscale convective systems. Okay, so these are clusters of thunderstorms. In the afternoon, you get these supercells to break out. Eventually, they merge into clusters or line segments, and then they sweep through in the overnight areas. These can influence the air mass too and situate those boundaries. Outflow can come out of those thunderstorms and set up another boundary and additional boundaries for thunderstorms to form later the following afternoon. It can also interact with existing boundaries and move those around. So severe weather is kind of hard to predict in that we don't always know exactly where the thunderstorms are going to go off, and we don't know 24, even 12 hours, sometimes even 10 hours out where those boundaries are actually going to be sitting. And so that matters a lot in terms of the predictability of severe weather. And the type of severe weather is another category of things that are hard to predict too. However, we can look at the general state of the atmosphere and understand what the conditions are favorable for. And so we've got a favorable severe weather setup out here today, particularly up here in the Corn Belt Midwest region again. Here is that convective complex that is now dying out, weakening, moving through central Illinois, Peoria, Springfield, up to Chicago. Another impulse is producing showers and thunderstorms that will go into the Northeast later today, provide a severe weather threat, at least a wind threat, on a marginal to isolated to maybe scattered basis later today, parts of the Northeast, and an impulse out here bringing some snow to our friend Chatty Kitty in Colorado is actually going to be working into the plains, strengthening a low pressure system, and that's going to put spin in the atmosphere, and we're going to see severe weather result, tornadoes, large hail, damaging winds. And so we saw severe weather reports yesterday. As a matter of fact, here's our surface map. There's our boundary. You see that? See how it shows up on the wind map, and it shows up on the surface map that somebody drew. And there's our little low pressure working into the plains. We'll be strengthening a little bit later today. Another impulse working with the Great Lakes. That's going to be heading into the Northeast. Severe weather threat up here in the Northeast and back from the Midland or Midwest, rather, Heartland area, I'm combining words, down to south central Texas. A little bit of snow out in the Rockies, higher elevations, rain in the lower elevations, and winter storm watches or warnings actually in the Cascades for some heavy snow out here as more energy works in the Northwest. Guess what's not happening? Rain in the Southeast. Going to be hot, getting hotter through the week. Here's your severe weather reports yesterday. 225 reports. Large hail, very large hail. We talked about this yesterday. These supercells, air is rising violently. The supercells are rotating. Cold temperatures aloft promote large hail growth, and we've got violent thunderstorms producing large hail, 2 to 3 inch in diameter hail up here in around Rochester, headed in toward just north of Madison. And we even saw hail reports close to Green Bay, but saw tornadoes up here as well. Spotters recorded a lot of tornado activity up along the border of Iowa and Minnesota, and also again in and around the Topeka and Kansas City area down here in Kansas and Missouri. Saw some large hail here as well, blue or wind reports, and we're going to see more reports out there later today. Alerts map, flood watch is still up around the Great Lakes areas here. Special weather statements up for very dry conditions in the southeast with wind. Red flag warnings with big time wind here in the southern plains. Very dry conditions out here, and a few winter or freeze. I think these are freeze advisories and a couple of winter weather advisories, and of course winter storm warnings up at the Cascades. So alerts map, not really all that active, but what is active is severe weather. And we're going to take a look at just where that's set up today. All right, so we're going to go up here and take a look. And we've got a couple of areas of enhanced risk. This is level 3 out of 5. All right, so that's what we're looking at around Madison, Wisconsin, Des Moines, Iowa, Chicago, Illinois, over in toward Detroit, Michigan. So lower Michigan up and around South Bend, Indiana, and then back here in Oklahoma as well. Just a little spot here in central Oklahoma and Texas. Those are the highest risks, and that's there for tornado activity. We're going to see supercells along the dry line form later today, and tornadoes are going to break out potentially in areas where you see the enhanced risk most likely. This is where the majority of the tornadoes will form, but you could see a tornado in any of these other areas too. But wind and hail are going to be big threats here in the slight risk area that's in yellow, and marginal risk for isolated thunderstorms through the Ohio Valley until you get up into the Northeast, where we see a slight risk in existence. Again, taking a look at the probabilities, yeah, we've got the potential for very strong tornadoes, okay? So where it's hatched, we're looking at EF2 or greater. This additional hatching here along the border of Wisconsin, Chicago, getting into Iowa, near Des Moines, up here in Madison, just northeast of Chicago or west of Chicago, could see some EF3s or higher in this area because we are going to see that boundary linger. Lots of instability, lots of rotation, got a low-level jet that'll be strengthening, and conditions are going to be quite favorable for tornadoes and even some strong tornadoes, and again, strong tornadoes possible through Oklahoma, northern Texas here, and parts of Kansas as well, southeast Kansas. With hail being a possibility too. Strong winds later today could see some severe gusts in those same areas that we have the highest risk of tornadoes. And again, just know that later on in the evening hours, the supercells that start to form are going to merge into clusters, line segments, and head through the area, bringing a more prominent wind threat. Hail and tornadoes will be the threat early on. A lot of that activity will congeal into line segments and begin to bring a more prominent wind threat. And of course, wind is a problem anywhere you see the yellow. Hail, again, we could see some big time hail. Again, another hatched area for baseball or larger size hail here in and around Madison, Wisconsin, and over into Iowa as well, and again down in central Oklahoma. So really could see some big time hail in these areas later today. It's going to be some strong storms. We've got a lot of instability out there, and we're going to take a look at that here in just a second. Tomorrow, the threat lessens a bit. We've got a couple of areas of slight risk over here in parts of the Ohio Valley, northern parts of the Ohio Valley, marginal risk around that. And then again, from Madison all the way back down into Wichita, we're looking at, or Wichita Falls, Texas, we're looking at plenty of instability again tomorrow. There's just going to be a question of how much will be there, but certainly the conditions will be favorable for severe weather, and that will diminish a bit on Thursday and ramp back up in a big way on Friday, which we'll take a look at in a second. All right, so we're going to get into specifics of what's going on today, take a look at the severe weather threat that's out there today, show you what's happening the rest of the week, maybe look at when the pattern will break. Got all that coming up right now. We're going to start here with our mid-level wind map. Why am I showing this? Well, because it sets the stage for everything else. If you are expecting a severe weather outbreak, you need wind shear, wind increasing with height or wind turning with height or both. All of that creates a sheared environment. You can have severe thunderstorms on a pop-up basis without wind shear, but your big tornado outbreaks, large hail, and all of those things usually happen in a wind sheared environment, and you need wind energy in order to make that happen. And you can see the brighter colors, the brighter the colors, the stronger the winds. And as we head through the afternoon, look at these brights here in brighter yellow and orange colors working through the Midwest, again into Texas. We've got a dry line situated in Texas. We've seen the dew point map over the last couple of days, so we're not going to waste time showing that again, but the flow continues out of the southwest, and we continue to see impulses move along in the flow, and at various times they get a little bit stronger, and those can help to strengthen low pressure at the surface and back the winds even more, right? Look at this big anticyclone sitting down here over the Gulf of Cold Rain, just shutting it all down for the southeast. Going to be hot and very dry underneath that, but in north of that, where the flow is and around the apex of that ridge, that's where our energy is going to be. That's why we have so much severe weather over the next few days in the plains. We head on through Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon. You can see some of that wind energy moving east as a cold front moves east, but look what happens by Friday. Friday afternoon, big time troughing, and winds really pick back up out here in the plains. We're going to see a low pressure develop in the northern plains again, bring another severe weather threat. We've already got what would be called an enhanced risk if it were within the 3-day period set up for Friday. Okay, so we're already looking at that. And we're going to see another big time severe weather event. Look at these colors just really explode by Friday evening into Saturday morning out here in the plains. So a strengthening system indeed is going to be underway in that time frame. The low-level jet around a mile up off the ground, that's 850 millibars. Again, same concept. The brighter the colors, the stronger the winds. And you can see as we head through the afternoon, those colors get more intense here around Iowa and Minnesota and in here into Illinois, right where our threat is. So the winds are strengthening as you go up off the ground, and those winds at 850 can be transported down with thunderstorms and give you wind gusts at the surface, and that is one of the reasons that we have a high wind threat in this area. And as we head through the nighttime hours tonight, the low-level jet strengthens, it backs off in the morning hours tomorrow, and then it re-strengthens back as we get into tomorrow evening. Again, not quite with the vigor that we see today, but still it's going to strengthen again. And as that happens, you end up seeing wind energy being transported down where the heavier convection takes place. Now, we're going to take a look and see how this all should play out radar-wise through the course of the afternoon. We get on in here till about 2 o'clock, and we've already got the potential for supercells to be forming in Iowa. Just because this shows a supercell near Des Moines doesn't mean that there's going to be one there at this specific time. The model cannot tell you exactly where thunderstorms are going to form, but they are going to be along that boundary as thunderstorms track to the south of that boundary and along it. That's where we're going to see the maximized tornado threat. So again, kind of in this area here, all right? So pay attention, particularly in these areas, and then back into parts of Oklahoma down here as well as supercells break out along the dry line. So the model's depicting a few thunderstorms early afternoon kicking off here. You're going to see some capping in the mid-levels of the atmosphere earlier today kind of inhibits thunderstorm development, but that cap will erode as heights begin to fall, cooler temperatures take over up in the atmosphere, and then instability begins to develop as we head through the afternoon. And you can see a few supercells up here, a few supercells starting to form down in Texas and work into Oklahoma, and that environment will just become ripe for more supercell activity. A few individual cells up here continuing as we get into 8 p.m. East Coast time, and then things begin to merge into line segments eventually and clustering down in the plains. South Texas looking at some thunderstorms as well, and this will just continue through the afternoon and the evening hours. By the time we get into the deep evening and overnight hours, things will diminish a bit. Probably by midnight and beyond, we'll start to see things wind down, although there would not surprise me to see a few more scattered thunderstorms out there that could produce severe gusts or something along those lines. Over here in the east, not a lot going on outside of the Ohio Valley until we get into the northeast, and we see a little bit of a line segment beginning to work through around 2 p.m. East Coast time, and that frontal boundary will sag south, and eventually everything will kind of push off to the east as we head through the afternoon into the early evening hours. Things will wind down earlier in the evening out in the northeast, but you can see that mesoscale convective system taking shape here through the Midwest, pushing into Michigan, northern Ohio, and eventually as we get on in toward midnight and just beyond, things will begin to settle down a bit out here. So that's how it's going to play out through the course of the rest of the day. Taking a look at the severe weather threat, I'm going to jump onto another display where you can see this better. There's your severe weather threat today, which you've already taken a look at. I'm going to go back in here, show you the severe weather threat for Thursday. All right, this is Thursday. Not a lot going on right now, just an isolated severe weather risk from central Ohio Valley back into the western part of the Tennessee Valley down here toward the Mississippi River Valley, a lot of valleys out here. That's what we have on tap for Thursday. And then Friday, this is what we're looking at already. So there's day 4 and day 5. Day 4 is Friday. Already have a big area from Oklahoma City all the way up to Des Moines again, where we look for potential for a severe weather outbreak, and then that shifts east a bit into the Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes as we get in toward Saturday, and then things probably maybe will diminish a bit after this. We could see an extension of this over on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see on that. So that's how it goes. Severe weather is fickle. You've got a lot of ingredients that go into making different severe weather types and outbreaks and things like that. But you can have a lot of ingredients to make a cake. They just don't do anything. It's sitting on the counter. You have to put them together. You have to turn the oven on, bake it. Eventually a cake comes out. Same with severe weather. You got to have the ingredients in place, which we have today. And it looks like the atmosphere is going to put those in the oven and unfortunately cook up some severe weather later this afternoon. So keep your eye to the sky, stay weather aware, make sure you have a way to receive weather alerts, and there you have it, my friends. So now we're going to get into see what happens with the pattern as we get on through the rest of the week and show the rest of the nation in terms of what you can expect around rain, snow, things like that through the course of the rest of the week. All right, as we head on through the rest of the week, this is this afternoon, and we've already looked at the radar through the central and eastern portion of the country, so I'm just going to pop this on. You can see thunderstorms breaking out later today, turning into clusters and line segments, and some snow in Colorado, more energy working in the northwest, some rain through the Ohio Valley overnight. As we head out the door tomorrow, could see a few clusters of showers and thunderstorms still hanging on. I doubt there'll be a lot of severe around. It's not impossible this time of year to have severe weather around, but certainly we're going to see showers and thunderstorms in areas where severe weather from the night before has turned into just sort of rain and thunder. And as we get into tomorrow afternoon, there's our severe weather threat again from the Great Lakes all the way back down to central Texas. More energy, snow in the higher elevations coming in out west, rain in the valleys and the lower lands. Rain through the northeast will continue to be a problem as we head through Thursday, potentially into Friday, before things kind of die out as that cold front begins to sag to the south. There's Thursday afternoon and evening, maybe some storms working into the Tennessee Valley, approaching severe limits. We'll have to watch and see how things kind of come together there. Would not surprise me to see an upgrade Thursday afternoon. More rain going into the northeast. No rain in the southeast where we really, really need it. Look at that. More snow into Colorado and Wyoming by the time we get into Friday afternoon. And here we have Friday afternoon with Thunderstorms breaking out from the Midwest down into the Central Plains. Could see a couple of rounds of severe weather along a cold front extending back from this low as we head in toward the overnight hours, Friday night into Saturday morning. And then things will settle down for at least a little bit before we pick back up the severe weather threat in the Ohio Valley later in the afternoon Saturday. As far as temperatures go, well, my friends, cool out west, warm in the east. That is going to be the theme for the rest of this week, and much above normal from the Ohio Valley to the southeast. We can see 90s here, parts of the southeast, and 80s making its way all the way up into parts of the mid-Atlantic and even the Great Lakes areas before all is said and done. Warm, warm, warm Thursday into Friday. And look what happens again as we head on into Friday. A cold blast comes out of Canada. That system that's winding up on Friday is going to drag a rather strong cold front through. By the time we get into Sunday, we're cooling off in the Great Lakes. That front is approaching the East Coast. Maybe we could even see a couple of showers along the decaying line that it comes through the southeast by the time we get to Sunday afternoon. But the cooler temperatures may be in store to start the work week, and hopefully we can get into a little bit of a pattern change that brings more rain chances in. Some of the models are beginning to signal that for next week and beyond. So we will watch and see how all of that plays out. In terms of temperatures over the next 3 days, we'll just look at that 80s all the way up into southern sections of the Northeast, as far as the Corn Belt region, setting the stage for severe weather today into Florida as well. As we head through the rest of the next couple of days, at least Tuesday, there are I don't know why this is, okay, there it is, Wednesday. I'm looking at the wrong side of the page. Wednesday, 90s getting up into the lower mid-Atlantic, up and down the eastern seaboard. Still very warm in the nation's midsection. That warmth will continue to persist through Thursday, and then finally rounding us out on Friday. Very warm again. This looks like today's temperature map from the Midwest all the way in through the lower sections of the Northeast. We're going to see 80s and potentially 90s across parts of the Southeast and Deep South for several days in a row. So it is going to be very warm this week, cool out west with troughing, and eventually that cool weather makes its way on in. We did have a 5.7 magnitude earthquake just east of Carson City. If you're watching this from anywhere out here and you felt that, let me know. There it is right there. That happened, I think, overnight tonight. So pretty shallow too, I think 5 kilometers. So I'm sure people felt that. So that's all that's going on, nothing in space. And that's really it for today. It's been kind of another long video. Spent a lot of time rambling, but I hope you learned some things. That's the goal here. Just teach you a few things, help you understand what causes weather and why sometimes it's unpredictable. Can't always blame the weatherman. Weatherman does the best he can with the tools that he has, and we just don't have perfect tools yet because we can't model the atmosphere in its entirety yet. One day, maybe. But in any event, that is what we have today, my friends. I hope you all have a wonderful Tuesday and that everything's going well for you. Continue to lift cold rain and our channel up and our community here up in prayer. And if there's anything I can be in prayer about, as I said, put it in the comments section. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody, and God bless.